Wings are back with a rockin' new album. Back to the Egg. It's really cooking. A dozen big ones on Back to the Egg, the brand new Wings album. Wings Back to the Egg, a timeless rock and roll flight through 12 superbly produced new songs on an album that really is perfection. Wings' brilliant new album, Back to the Egg, out now on record and cassette.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast. We are a Paul McCartney talk show mainly dealing with the solo career of the one and only Paul McCartney. This is episode 140 where we're going to be talking about the Back to the Egg album. I'm one of your two co-hosts, Tom Hunyadi. There he goes, Andy's got it in his hand right there. And our mystery guest has it right there as well. And as you may know me from my other show, Talk More Talk, a solo Beatles video cast. And as always, I'm joined by my partner in crime, my backwards traveler, Andy Nichols. Andy, what's going on, my friend?
Good evening, sir. Welcome back.
Yes, welcome back indeed. Back into the swing of things. Staying busy. I know you're starting back up again. We're getting busy, and like I told you people before, I went back to my catering job that I had a few years back. So we've been crazy busy. I mean, as cities cramming all these tours, trying to get back that money that they lost over the last
recoup.
Year.
Sure, busy times.
Busy, absolutely. So, we're getting like 4 or 5 days in a row of tours, then we get one day off, and then it's back more tours. So they're definitely kicking back in. So, but as you can see, we have a guest with us today who I've been really excited to have. I've been trying to figure out a way to get him on the last year, and he's finally here. We figured it out. Back to the Egg, and Steve here. He's a music journalist. He's done liner notes for plenty of CDs and box sets, and he's a podcaster and he's a DJ. He's going to tell us all about that in a little bit. But Stephen Schnee, welcome to the show, and how you doing, my friend?
I am doing very well. It is an honor to be here, and I appreciate being asked to talk about this album, and I look forward to our conversation.
Very cool, very cool. So, Steve, let's just, we're going to skip the news. Really not much news to talk about or anything. I think it's been a little quiet in the Maca universe the last couple weeks. I know a couple things are being shipped, and I'll show those when we or I or Andy gets the stuff. But let's talk about what you do. You got your own YouTube channel, right, Stephen Schnee, and then you also show some of your shows that you have out there in the web. Is that correct?
Yeah, well, my channel, I have a whole bunch of different series. I have CD. Well, I'm known as the CD junkie because that's all I collect is CDs. And I have shows where I focus on a certain band, and those will be 8 minutes to 15 minutes long, whatever. Plus I have interview shows where I interview artists. And then I also do a show with Matthew Street called The Matt and Steve Show. So all these shows appear on my channel. I don't want to say regularly, but as often as I can do them. And then I do a show live on Tuesday nights where I play my radio show called This is Ski Lodge. And that focuses on sort of sunshine pop from the late 60s up through soft pop from the early 70s. And sort of a good time feeling type show. And I get more and more people showing up live. Each episode's about an hour and a half long. I don't save them, so you have to be there live, but you can hear the shows on Mixcloud.
Yeah, no, they're a lot of fun. I really enjoy hanging out and listening to because as music fans, we all want to discover new music, and thanks to you, especially your '80s show that you don't
Hmm.
you don't you, do you still do that, or do you not? Is that completely done now?
No, I still do it, but I do a This Is Pop, which is like
Right.
a power pop and power pop adjacent show, and I do a '80s show. And both of those shows are less frequent because the Ski Lodge shows are the ones that really attract the listeners. And I only have a certain amount of time, and I want to keep putting out stuff that people are going to come back for and listen to
Right.
week after week. So I do Ski Lodge once a week, and the other shows I try to fit in once a month or once every 2 months.
Gotcha. And then, you're also this big power pop guy like we know Matthew Street is. I mean, you guys have
Hmm. Hmm.
interviewed, musicians
Hmm.
in that genre. Talk about that genre for a second because it seems like it's kind of like an underrated genre. I mean, it's not a lot, it doesn't get that much attention in my opinion. Do you think?
No, it doesn't. But that's because the big thing is that power pop is something different to everybody. Andy might think power pop is different than you might think. To me, power pop is that sort of skinny tie, jangly guitar, harmony, 3 minute great. Basically, what, in my opinion, a great example of a power pop album would be the Hard Day's Night album by the Beatles. Now,
Mm,
people don't consider that power pop, but I think that that's really the formula. So, the 2 3 minute songs, great harmonies, hooks that go round and round in your head. There could be some ballads in there and stuff, but a lot of people will think that maybe a melodic grunge band might be power pop, which is not the
mm.
case. Power pop doesn't necessarily have to be limited to just two guitar, bass, drum. It could have strings, it could have piano, but
Okay.
it's one of those things where you know it when you hear it.
Mm. And what give us like a few of the big power pop bands that people should know in that genre.
Like one of the biggest power pop bands would be the Knack. But My
Mm,
Sharona to me is not necessarily power pop. Good Girls Don't is perfect power pop. If you
okay.
think about now the Romantics, What I Like About You, or When I Look in Your Eyes, those are kind of garagey power pop.
Schnee, what about a
Um,
song about like by the Raspberries, "Go All the Way"?
yeah, that's 100% power pop.
That's okay,
Absolutely. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Badfinger, No Matter What.
Okay.
Um, Badfinger, Baby Blue, Badfinger, Day After
Mm,
Day. Bands that play this kind of music. Also, let's say a band like Squeeze, who are
mm,
not power pop, but their earlier stuff are like RG Bargy and those albums. They're really close to what power pop is. Some people may know some of the Squeeze songs and go, "Well, gee, I like that melodic, hook-filled pop." But like I said, usually all power pop, and I don't mean this negatively, is derivative of the Beatles.
mm,
Basically, the
Fair.
Beatles laid the foundation for it. I think actually it goes all the way back to Buddy Holly. Um,
mm.
but and then you take Buddy Holly and you throw him in a room with Everly Brothers and you get the Beatles, and
Yeah.
then you build upon that. And but there's so many great the Rubinoos combine the great crunchy Beatles pop with the bubblegum pop of the Archies.
Mm.
And Shoes is another great band. The Last, their first couple albums, and there's so many great bands. Usually they start with the word the. 2020 is an exception. They're a great power pop band. Paul Collins Beat, another great power pop band. And no,
Gotcha.
not Phil Collins from Genesis. I'm talking about Paul Collins.
Yeah, I mean, when you were playing, power pop, I kind of get the just maybe because there are some '90s musicians out there that maybe have that power pop
Hmm.
aspect
Hmm.
of them, but maybe not necessarily power pop. But I mean, it was basically you would say like probably what '70s to mid '80s where the power pop probably had its best run.
that was really sort of when it really started bubbling and boiling up. It had always been there, but it really came to the surface then. And there's still great power pop bands out now, like the Legal Matters, and just great hook-filled power pop bands. But again, since power pop is such a specific genre and it doesn't sell, like if I walked into any record store today and said, "Do you have a power pop section?" They're going to go, "A what?"
Right, or even like it's like sunshine pop. I mean, could you even classify sunshine pop today? You're not, how do you do that? Do they even know what it is?
Exactly, and that's the problem. Is so a lot of people are going to say, "What's power pop?" But if you walk in there and you say, "Do you have any cool guitar indie bands?" They're, "Oh yeah, we got this whole section here of guitar indie." Power pop is a very specific genre, but it's not really. I mean, if you really look at Jellyfish is one of the biggest power pop bands ever. They don't sound like 2020, but they come from that same mold that the Beatles set in the 60s.
Gotcha. Now, also around that time too, late '70s, we come in with the new wave, and we're talking about these genres because it kind of, it kind of works in with the Back to the Egg type of feel to it.
Really, with the arrival of the Sex Pistols, 76, 77, really.
Yeah. Now, the Sex Pistols came in, and even though they were edgy and punk, if you really listen to them now, they're not. I mean, the Sex Pistols are like one of you listen to other bands that came after, and you're like, holy crud, the Sex Pistols were like mellow compared to some of these bands, but the Pistols came in and they knocked down what was going on, the whole pompous, pretentious singer-songwriter and prog rock.
Basically.
I'm not I'm not saying that stuff is bad, because I love that stuff just as much as anybody else. But they came and they knocked it down and said, "Hey, we're taking it right back to rock and roll's foundation," and then bands started building from there. But a lot of bands, they either went to the edgy, hard-edged punk side. Other bands, like The Clash, were somewhere in between, where they were edgy, but they were melodic. They knew how to write songs. The Undertones, Buzzcocks, these bands knew how to write songs. They knew that the song was the most important thing. And so that's sort of where New Wave came from. Then you'd get the herky-jerky post-punk of like Gang of Four and Wire and people like that, who weren't playing. Post-punk is more like experimental punk, but some of the bands, they went in that melodic direction, and so, like I said, when you think back to those periods, the Jam. There were bands like Yachts, who were just one of the greatest bands from that period. And they were sort of caught somewhere between new wave and power pop, so they were hard to classify. The Records were coming, the group The Records, like I said, the Undertones, Buzzcocks, Bram Tchaikovsky, the Motors. These bands were coming out, and they were focusing on the 3-minute song, because people had forgotten what a 3-minute song was. I remember once, in between my freshman and sophomore year in high school, partaking in the Mary Jane with a friend in his house, and he put on Yes, Tales of Topographic Oceans, and as soon as that was done, I put on Squeeze Argy Bargy, and then he started going, "Dude, this is weird. These songs are short." And it's like, yeah, because you're talking, you could fit 5 or 6 songs aside on a Squeeze album, and you could fit half a song on a Yes
Ritual.
album.
Yeah, side 4, Ritual, done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
So, but it was the energy really that because a lot of these bands were basically pub rock bands. They came, Nick Lowe, Elvis Costello, The Damned, all these people were coming from this sort of pub rock. The Stranglers were like 10 years older than all the other punks, and they were all coming from this great pub rock movement that was happening in the UK. Then it became punk rock, and became new wave and power pop. And '79 was really right before synth pop really took over. I mean, there were bands already, that were doing it. Right. But
so if you can kind of set the scene for 1979 for when Back to the Egg comes out, I mean, as you talk about, you've got the punk and you got this new power pop and the new wave. Was there any room out there for the older musicians out there? Or?
We see that's really the main thing here is there was always room, and I'm not a Paul McCartney's sycophant, but there's always room for Paul McCartney somewhere. Right. And McCartney, and I'm sure you guys have touched with this, never made, through the 70s, never made the same album twice.
Right.
Every album was completely different from what came before and what came after. So when, I think that London Town came out at a time when punk and energy and this stuff was really catching on. You were more likely going to see people queuing up outside the Marquee to see Buzzcocks or somebody like that. And that's what the papers there was going to focus on. They weren't going to focus on McCartney filling up Wembley, actually he wasn't touring for London Town, but you know what I mean. I mean, if he had played there, that would have been the show to see for 95% of the people. But the papers were focusing on this new, burgeoning, exciting movement. Punk had sort of started dying out commercially. Right. Because it was being taken over by the melodic stuff, the more hook filled,
more radio friendly stuff. Yeah,
not quite. Yes, more radio friendly. When we think about it, when we hear it now, definitely more radio friendly. But a lot of these bands still weren't getting on the radio, but they were more comforting or accessible.
Accessible.
Yeah. To people outside of punk, the people who were too scared to go deal with safety pins and spiked hair. They didn't want to get beat up at a show. They wanted to go to a show where they could just, pump their fist in the air and just go, this is awesome. This is great music. And that's kind of the whole power pop and new wave thing was really happening. So you're seeing all these great bands filling these great clubs all over England. L.A., New York, they were about a year behind, maybe 6 months behind. They were still doing the punk thing, but the power pop thing was growing. So you were getting albums by 2020. You were getting albums by Paul Collins. These were the albums to get because it was song-oriented. And people were really getting into the fact that, hey, we're going back to guitars. We're going back to 2-3 minute songs. And it was just a really super exciting time for the indie bands, for just the local bands that never broke out of their cities, for the international or the internationally successful bands. It was a very, very, very exciting time for music because you didn't know where it was going to go.
Right.
And that was just wonderful.
Very cool. So, Back to the Egg comes out June of 79. We get this something completely different in March from Paul, Good Night Tonight, which was a big, top 10 hit from Paul. And then you get Back to the Egg, completely different feel,
yes.
than from that hit. But the album itself, like I said, it only goes to number 8 in the U.S., which at that point in time is worth showing in the charts, right, Andy? I think London Town going to number 2, right?
2.
Yeah. 2, yeah, and again,
worst showing since Wildlife, really.
Right, yeah, exactly. So, but like you said, Steve, I mean, all of these up and coming, younger bands that are emerging, you can tell that the youth is starting to embrace these acts. So, but like you said, there is a spot for McCartney. But yeah, go ahead, Andy.
So to say, so you said Tom went to 8, right? Which by any artist's measures, that's a great showing. Went to number 8, but by that time, after the success of Wings, that was a real failure for them.
Right, exactly. And then go ahead.
The interesting thing about number 8, okay, if you think about number 8, think about how many copies it took to get to number 8. That's probably about 50 times, maybe even 100 times the amount that it takes to get to number 1 today. So he's still selling a lot of records.
Right.
Yes.
But yeah, it's just not getting, where it should have been, actually.
And incredible run of 5 #1 albums, including a live album. So that's a tough act to follow.
Live album.
That's right. On top of that, so it certainly was the end of a decade, and really kind of going number 8. You got to look at him going, okay, well, I guess we're really this is the end now, because we've bombed out here. But when you look, it's hard to say bombed out and you hear number 8. It's still a good showing.
Right. And especially when you go back to that record and you listen, still today, that album still retains that energy. Sometimes you can go back to any record. I'm not talking about McCartney, but you can go back to an album from 1979 and say, oh, that's a little flat now. I remember it having more energy back when it came out, but not Back to the Egg. Back to the Egg still retains the same power and the same punch that it had when it first came out. And you get this wonderful new energy in that album that now I love London Town. It's my I have to admit, Back to the Egg is my favorite Paul McCartney album. But there was such a renewed energy. Could it have been Steve Hawley, the new member, Steve Hawley on drums, Lawrence Juber on guitar? Could it have been that? Could it have been that Paul McCartney was sitting there and saying, wow, I really dig Bram Tchaikovsky. I really dig the undertones and whoever else I've mentioned. I want to go back to that. I want to go back to my roots. I think this Back to the Egg is a great successor to Band on the Run.
Right.
Because Band on the Run was filled with that energy.
Very good point, Schnee. The energy factor, both of these are very close. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, and I should specify that it was 8 here in the States, but it did go to number 6 in the UK. And I think you kind of saw a switch starting with this album, with McCartney kind of now starting to do a little bit better on the charts in the UK than he was here in the US.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, but disco was still king come 79, even though we were getting all of this, the new wave and the power pop, and the punk were still going strong here. Disco was still king, so now your fans are, you're picking and choosing what genre of music you still want to buy, whether it's, vinyl or cassette or whatnot.
I think that McCartney was really just at a creative peak. Because look at Goodnight Tonight. Now, people say that that's his stab at disco. If you go back and listen to it, it's got more of a Latin feel than anything else.
Than a disco feel, yes.
Yeah. And plus, McCartney does this thing in that song that he only does like a couple bars, that little weird little vocal thing, right? It's one of the catchiest things in the song, and McCartney doesn't overplay it. He just does it this little segment in the song. And then it's backed with a song that I consider one of McCartney's finest and completely different from the A-side and completely different from Back to the Egg.
The album,
but
Back to the Egg,
but
and maybe that's why he didn't put him on the album, because thematically they just did not jive with the rocking concept of the album.
Yeah. Now, Daytime, Nighttime Suffering, one of his best songs ever, in my opinion. If it had been mixed different, it probably would have fit on that album. But it's such an amazing song that I just always ask myself, how is it that wasn't an A-side and wasn't a number 1 single? But he was so creative at the time, had so much great material that he was okay leaving that as a B-side.
Right.
But go ahead.
No, but I was just saying, with the album Back to the Egg, you mentioned back to the roots type of thing, which Paul had that same idea 10 years prior, with the Get Back thing, and then for my research, Linda came up with the idea with Back to the Egg for the title, and it was kind of like the theme of the album a little bit.
Concept,
right, exactly. So what do? You bring in Chris Thomas, co-producer. Obviously, work with the Sex Pistols, work with the Beatles. So he's got
Pretenders,
Procol Harum.
I know.
and he produced Badfinger's "Wish You Were Here," which is my favorite album of all time.
Oh wow, okay. So bringing in like a Chris Thomas, who has that experience working with Sex Pistols, Pretenders, punk, new wave stuff at that point in time. You got to get a sense that okay, he's going to try this, this kind of genre. Now Chris Thomas is kind of like that safety net, in a way.
Plus he knows
he's got that,
and he
knows
him.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think that working with Chris Thomas, I think was a great idea, because what Chris Thomas was able to do, and in fact, it's very similar. Similar ideas to when he worked with on the Chaos and Creation album with the guy who produced
Goodrich.
Nigel Goodrich.
Yep.
Yeah. Thing is with Chris Thomas. Chris Thomas came in and said, "Okay, here, Paul, you've given us 36 tracks or enough ideas for 36 tracks. Let's strip them down to 12." Whereas with Nigel Goodrich, he probably the sound of that album is very big at times. So I think that he allowed Paul to do what he wanted, where Chris Thomas helped Paul cut the fat, so to speak. Not that at that time that there was a lot of fat in McCartney's material, but he helped keep it rooted and filled with an energy that equaled anybody else at that time.
Right, because when you go to the album, the first first 9 songs, they're all upbeat songs. They're filled with energy on these songs. I mean, even a song like Again and Again and Again, which is not the biggest rocker on it, it still has a really kick-ass guitar solo on there. It's still upbeat.
Arrow Through Me is a little more jazzy.
I mean, of the first 9 songs, Arrow Through Me is probably the only one that's really more on would you consider like a more new wave with the all the synth work on that song?
What, on Arrow Through Me?
Yeah.
I think I have a theory that there's a time traveling Paul. Okay. That Paul put out Paul should have switched Arrow Through Me and put that on London Town, and then put on like I've Had Enough.
I've Had Enough on Back to the Egg. Yes.
Yeah. So I think that he, somehow the time traveling Paul McCartney got those 2 songs mixed up and like, I can't go back and change it now.
Right.
But see, Arrow Through Me still has that energy because he has that rawness in his voice, that kind of really, when you think about other songs, it's not that George Harrison 1974 tour rawness. It's a pure,
the Rod Stewart rawness.
No, it's a pure, I'm letting my guard down. I don't need to have the smooth Yesterday voice. I need to give the song what it needs.
A little more, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's got a bunch of these tracks. I mean, even a song like Winter Rose is still kind of
raspy,
raw kind of voice. Getting back to the album, okay, it was filmed. It was recorded. From what do we got here? June of '78 to February of '79. A long time.
Couple different locations too.
Couple different locations. You got in Campbelltown, the Spirit Ranchian Studio. You got the Limp Castle in Kent. You got EMI Studios.
Replica,
which was the first time because Paul's not a patient person. EMI was booked, and then so what does he do? He goes downstairs in the basement of his
Soho,
Soho, and turns it into a studio.
It only uses it once and then dismantles it.
Right.
Yeah. Don't forget that.
Yeah. So, but we were fortunate enough to talk to Chris Thomas. My other show, Talk More Talk, during that White Album Symposium, and he mentioned a lot about the length of the these sessions here, because that's a long time. You're looking June to February. You're looking at what 8-9 months there, and he was talking about how unsatisfied he was on his live tracks. He would mention how Bowie would come in and heard the bass line and he complimented on Paul on it, and then he ended up changing it
Well, Bowie wanted the broadcast to be a single. So I mean, come on.
Right? Yes.
Yeah.
So and then another thing I found out too was doing research was the song "Cage" was originally on there over Baby's request. I didn't know you knew that, Andy.
I did.
So, which Cage would have made that even more interesting.
Cage should have been on this album. It really should have been, my opinion.
Right. And it came within a couple months later. Then it got a Back to the Egg TV special, which was pretty much just all videos of a bunch of the songs. Funny enough, the UK didn't get that special until '81, after Wings had pretty much broken up.
I remember watching that, and it was on it wasn't on major channels. It was like local channels. So in Orange County, where I was living, it was like on Channel 9 or Channel 13. But I also remember shortly after, the album came out in June, right? Yeah, well, in September is Labor Day. And during Labor Day is the Jerry Lewis Telethon. And that year, 1979, Paul McCartney did not show up, but he sent the videos of Spin It On and Getting Closer. So during the Jerry Lewis Telethon, they played the brand new Paul McCartney videos, or brand new for Jerry Lewis Telethon.
For that, yeah.
Yeah. And they were the same clips that are in that TV special. They didn't film anything special just for that show. The
videos, right?
Yeah. So I just remember being excited because
Right.
Go ahead.
Well, so you said you got London Town. Did you get London Town when it came out?
The day it came out.
So obviously then the following year, Back to the Egg. What were your thoughts when you first put? Because would you get it on record or cassette back then?
Record.
Great. Okay.
Well, one thing that I remember clearly, before we talk about Back to the Egg, London Town, I remember, Licorice Pizza was a record store that, a chain in California, and they would have signs made by Capitol, that were probably 12 by 24 or maybe 24 by 36, whatever, in the windows. New Paul McCartney album, and then they would handwrite the date in or whatever. So they would have the album cover. They'd be advertising it, a week, 4 weeks before the album came out. So you'd get really, really excited. Back to the Egg, I don't remember them doing that. And of course, I think Back to the Egg was his first album on Columbia.
Album on
Columbia. Columbia, yeah.
Yeah. So they were obviously going to do something different. But when I heard the album, it blew my mind because at that point, I'd already, since February 1978, I was buying any record by any power pop, new wave, punk band that I could find. But I was still a Beatle fan. Been a Beatle fan since I was 5 months old when they did the Ed Sullivan Show. So of course I don't remember it, but so I grew up with the Beatles, loving the Beatles, and disliking this, loving that, all that stuff. But when Back to the Egg came out, I was just floored because wow, this is Paul McCartney, that we all love, doing this energetic new wave, some may call it power pop, even like it was just awesome to get like two song melodies or medleys on there. And sure, you sit there and you go like, well, those are just incomplete songs he probably threw together. I don't care what they are, just each of those two songs on each of those medleys are fantastic. And then just to get this blast of great energy and great songwriting, that's the thing. The hooks right up front. It's not like here. Let's get creative with the production. No, it's like let's put the songs here, and then we'll put everything else behind them. And that's really the way that Paul McCartney works best. I think is when the melodies are just right up front.
Right up front. Yeah.
You mentioned the songwriting where, he must have been on a creative peak at this point in time because, London Town, what'd you get? You got 5 co-writes with Denny. Here, you didn't get any. So that team or that co-writing team, it was pretty much non-existent after London Town, and plus with the success of Mulligan Tire. So here you are. I mean, all the tracks except for one are McCartney, credited.
Mm-hmm.
So obviously these songs are fresh. I mean, a couple of them came from years prior, but most of these are pretty much right in that time.
Yeah, and all of them are just kind of different from each other. So like if you listen to like the opening guitar on To You, or if you listen to this, it's not like, hey, let's get this energy and let's just play these a certain way. Every song is arranged different. So hey, let's start this one out with the guitar, or let's start this one out with this, or just this, everybody come in with a big strum and then go right into Getting Closer. And it was such a fascinating and exciting album, and it's still, when I listen to it today, I still get that excitement.
Well, you bring up a good point about the different sounding. I mean, with all the rockers on here, they all sound completely different. And you can go to maybe like a Guns N' Roses or Metallica, and a lot of those rockers they sound the same, especially their earlier stuff. With here, I totally agree with you on that. I mean, each rocker sounds completely different. I think that's one of the great things about this album as well.
Different guitar sounds. And it's, and one thing that if you listen on the surface, the one thing that is kind of missing is it doesn't have more Linda on the surface. But when you listen to any Wings album, she's such an integral part of that harmony.
Yes.
We sing her praises all the time.
Yeah, and she's so important to that Wings sound. And even Paul McCartney's subsequent solo career up until her passing had that
element,
certain sound. Yeah. And it's sorely missing once she passed away, because it was Paul and Linda's voices. She didn't have the greatest voice, but she had the greatest voice for Paul McCartney and Wings. She was, you get the Paul, the perfect Paul, you get the Denny, and right in between.
Benny and Linda, it's a perfect, the harmonization of those three voices really contributed to it. And that's she worked to get to that. She wasn't to your point, she wasn't a great singer, but she evolved, and he really worked her, and they created a great sound.
Oh, absolutely. And she was perfect for what she did.
Yeah. Andy, when do you remember discovering the album Back to the Egg?
Back to the Egg, second generation Beatle fan. So really just kind of going through and learning the discography. Really didn't really know anything about it other than it was just the next album to get, It was like, okay, you got your list, you got your books. Okay, well, and again, I grew up in the mid 80s, early 90s. So you're just looking, okay, there's an album called Back to the Egg. I've got to find it. Don't know anything about it, but I'll give it a try. And that's, of course, was my initial, because maybe I might have seen the video for Getting Closer, maybe on VH1, maybe, but my exposure to it was rather limited, other than just getting it,
Right, because first Wings Greatest comes out prior to Back to the Egg. The singles don't do great. They're top 40, but they don't do great. We're Getting Closer and Arrow Through Me. They do fine, but they're not great. And then plus, there's nothing on all the best from Back to the Egg.
So it's very kind of like a hidden album. Like, well, what's really on this record? Because nothing really, again, publicized. To your point, there's no big hits on it on compilations. So, I remember being pleasantly pleased. I mean, it's a record I still revisit quite often. I like London Town better, as much as Schnee here, but it's one that I revisit quite a bit, and it still retains the freshness from the minute I heard it 25 years ago, even till today.
There's lots of interesting things going on Back to the Egg. Like, when you're talking about Arrow Through Me, when those horns come in, it's kind of, everything else, might have, a certain sound to it, but when those horns come in, they're right there just jumping out at you. And, they almost scare you when they come in, because, you're not expecting it, because, it's mostly that keyboard and stuff. But, then you've got just Rockestra theme with all these great people on it. You've got So Glad to See You Here, which, surprisingly, there's that, at the very beginning of the album, 2 or 3 songs in, you get "We're Open Tonight."
Oh, you get the link. Yeah, again. Yeah.
And then "So Glad to See You Here." The whole band starts playing that, and it's almost like a return to those to that musical part, but it's such a big different thing, and it's much more powerful, and it inspires you to say, I'm going to go back and listen to this again.
Right. Yeah.
No,
I agree. Yeah, I was getting the all the McCartney records at this in the mid 90s or even early 90s. I mean, I had like greatest hits and stuff like that, but I didn't have like actual albums until pretty much into the 90s. And then I remember towards the end of the 90s, I went to go visit Uncle, who was inspirational for my Beatle fandom. And we played London Town and Back to the Egg, and I remember liking London Town a lot more lyrically, but then I was just so surprised by Back to the Egg, and like we said, the energy of that album is just phenomenal. But let's get to the songs. We can just run through our thoughts on them, because this album opens really interestingly, with Reception, and then just going through radio stations and and finding something that you like on the radio. I mean, what did you think about the opening song? Or I don't know if you want to call it a song or an instrumental.
I thought it was great because it set the standard. It kind of made you say, like, what are you going to get? What's coming up? You don't know, because when you're switching around the radio back in those old days, this is before satellite. A lot of people, we all had to do that when we were younger. So you're switching around and you're trying to find something that attracts you and makes you want to stop at that station, and then bingo, Getting Closer.
Right out of the gate. Oh, it's tremendous. Yeah. It definitely sets the stage for what you're listening to. Is this going to be a concept album again? It's throughout the whole piece. I mean, unlike really none of his albums at this point had opened up with something quite as esoteric as that, right? Switching radio and hearing all this stuff in and out, and you don't really know that until you hear the other pieces on the album later, like the broadcast and other things, that you hear in that little 2-minute opening opening of the Reception, which is very interesting, I would think, for that. But I was always like, okay, we don't know what this is going to be, and then boom, right into a gold standard. In my opinion, Getting Closer.
Yeah, and I just you get to exactly. I really enjoyed Reception. I've been enjoying it more and more, especially this whole weekend. I've been playing this album nonstop, and I really dig the idea. And if this was planned to be a concept album, it did start off, I think, properly with the way it started, and then bam, right into Getting Closer, which for me is, like Andy said, good point, the gold standard for rockers, because you just early in those 70s, in mid 70s, we were getting good rockers here, but then with London Town, it kind of like almost stopped with. But I mean, I don't really consider I've had enough or Name and Dress to be like those hard pounding rockers like he would do, like with Junior's Farm, and even with Getting Close, perfect, I think, rocker. And I think Lawrence Juber was a great addition, because I think his electric guitar playing, or just his brilliance and his knowledge of the guitar, I think was really great for this album. What do you think, Schnee?
And the album has so many great songs on it, but there's no song that could have sat in that place after Reception other than Getting Closer. I think
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, I think through the rest of the album, maybe you could switch a couple songs around, maybe, but I think it's fine, the way it is. But yeah, Getting Closer is fantastic, and I almost look at it as remember the 1-2 punch that he gave you on Venus and Mars. Venus Mars Rock Show, then he comes up with a ballad right after that, which is one of his greatest songs, 11 Song. But he does it again with We're Open Tonight.
We're Open Tonight. It's the same kind of feel, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So Getting Closer was the first single from the album here in the U.S. Old Siamser was opened in the U.K., but went 20 here in the U.S. So not bad. I mean, okay showing. However, you would maybe think maybe Arrow Through Me may have been the better first leadoff single. I don't know. We can talk about that once we get to that song.
Mm-hmm.
We're Open Tonight. Yeah, definitely had that feel. Again, as a kind of like a concept, we're getting closer, and then, we're opening tonight. Maybe.
In fact, I think that's what the album was going to be rumored to be called for a while.
Right,
It was going to be called. It was going to be called that.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and it definitely had that loving song feel.
And also, I'm Caring.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good point.
So he basically hits you hard, or at least either sound wise or emotionally at the beginning, and then gives you this really soft song, and then doesn't really get that soft for the rest of the album. It's kind of like, okay, here we are, we can rock it, we can lay back and chill, but you know what, we're just gonna end up rocking it for the rest of the album. He doesn't offer anything quite as mellow as We're Open Tonight.
So, and then to kind of continue with the theme, that here, This Is It, and then it goes, bang, and get some crunchy guitars to where you think, okay, we're at the show, here's the announcer, this is it, band's on the stage, they start playing. Andy, your thoughts on Spin It On?
I think that's of all the songs that kind of capture that kind of punk period. I think this is the one track on the album, other than maybe To You, where you can really hear where he was derivative and trying to be influenced by some of that music coming of that time with this track.
Yeah, Spin It On, I think, was like, out of all the songs on the album, as much as I love it, I think it's the weakest track on the album. But it is the most new wave punk influence. In my opinion, the most obvious new wave punk influence.
It's clear that's derivative of the punk influence is all over that track.
Yeah, but I think that was the B-side of
it was the B-side of Getting Closer.
Yeah.
And cool guitar solo from Juber on that one. Obviously, there was a video filmed for the special, as well as Getting Closer. These two songs were also performed for the '79 tour.
That's right.
Right.
Obviously, they liked them enough to present them to the crowd and for the tour. So.
And actually, a little fun fact: if you watch, there's a little clip of him warming up with the band that he had in '87 on the Wogan show, and the band goes into a little riff of "Spin It On" before they actually go into the next song. Check that out on YouTube if you haven't seen that.
Yeah.
Yes, good find. Then we get to song 5, which we get to the one and only Denny Lane composition here, Again and Again and Again, which I think from time to time kind of gets a little pissed on from time to time. Doesn't maybe get some respect. Yeah, I know that maybe it deserves, but I really enjoy this one. What about you, Schnee?
Yeah, I like it. I think it's whimsical Lane, not quite as whimsical as maybe one of the songs he did from what is it, Deliver Your Children, or
right.
London
but
Town.
I think it's in that vein, and I think it totally fits, because again, it has an energy, but a completely different energy. Would Daytime Nighttime Suffering have fit better on the album? I don't think so. I think that this I think it's one of those songs that kind of needs to be there, because I think that when you get an album that just pow 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 all the way through, it kind of becomes a little overwhelming. So sometimes you need a pow pow drop a little bit, pow pow drop a little bit. And I think Again and Again and Again is one of those songs that allows you to sit back and listen to the melody.
Breathe. Exactly.
Yeah.
Take a deep breath and get ready for the next.
I mean, Lane does a great job vocally on it. I just think it drags a little bit too long for me, and it takes changes the mood of the album a little bit too much.
Part of that could be the fact that this was originally 2 songs, Again and Again and Again, and then the other title, Little Woman.
Right.
So, and then it was Paul that suggested, okay, let's
merge them,
because it's worked so many times,
as he does later on the album with 2 songs,
it's going to work again in a few songs later.
Twice.
Yeah, again, so a video film for this one. Again, it was performed during the '79 tours.
They did it live then too. Yeah,
they gave it live to get Denny another vocal in there. So again, I think it's a fine song. It's a nice addition to the album. And then we get to like another really strong rocker, Old Siam, Sir Andy.
This is a great one. This is a cornerstone track for me for this record. One of the strongest on the entire thing. Great little keyboard intro there, which I think is Linda.
Yeah, Linda's idea was for the kind of the Indian theme to that.
Yeah. Which is tremendous. I remember, too, we're talking about Paul's voice on this record. Right. He was still smoking pretty heavily back then. So that probably lent itself to the raspiness of the voice as well.
Possibly.
He was still a heavy smoker then. So I've always thought about that, too. But Old Siam, and it's raspy. You can hear it on this song. Man, but it's just a great rocker throughout.
Right. You get a little nervous because, I give Let Me Roll It to You a hard time because it's just built around that same riff over throughout the whole damn song. And here, this is kind of built around the same riff as well, but it changes tempo and goes into a different direction.
Something else, right.
Something else, a couple times during the song, which, I think, exactly, which I really appreciate rather than, again, that might be the key to having a professional like Juber in there to kind of change it up a little bit. The guitar wizard that he is, and but Schnee, what are your thoughts on Old Siam, sir? Sorry.
I thought that it was an extremely brave and ultimately bad choice for a single.
In the UK,
I absolutely love the song. First time I heard it back in 1979, so I guess June 1979, I thought, he's taken that same idea that he did with Morse Moose and the Grey Goose. He's coming up with this great little riff and building a song upon it. Like, I don't think he sat there with his, with an acoustic guitar and I am sorry, and then write it down, like he does in the Waterfalls video. I think that Old Siam Sir was probably created as a jam, probably sat there at a piano, and then Denny goes, okay, let me play that. And then it just built from there. That sounds like a song that built itself. And it's
it was organically, it was kind of like a band, what am I looking? The word I'm looking at. It was a band feel. It was a band
collaboration.
Collaboration. Thank you. That was the word. Yes. Thank you. Yeah. So,
and again, it got played live, and they did a really great. He really supported a lot of, a lot of the tracks on that '79 tour. I mean, we're from this good, healthy amount. We're from this album, and Old Siam, Sir. That's a brave song to tackle vocally.
Yeah, and it's but like I was saying earlier, it's a brave and ultimately unsuccessful single. I think that Old Siam, Sir should not have been a single because of the fact that it was so different that it was going to throw people off. Because I'm thinking more of a commercial thing. Like, every song on this album could have been a great single, but if you want to attract somebody to the album, in the UK it should have been Getting Closer. Even To You might have been something to float to radio. Maybe not release as a single, but release to radio.
Right. Let me ask you. Yeah, let me ask you about that. Let's kind of work on that a little bit on this whole commerciality of this. When you're listening to an album, do you kind of get that? Do you kind of like listen for songs that will be commercial in a sense, even though it might be? Even though it might never be a single, but are you listening for that kind of thing, Schnee, when you're listening to something new?
Here is the crazy, stupid thing that I've been doing ever since I was a kid. Is, I was big on making mixtapes and then mix CDRs, right? So whenever I listen to an album, I hear the songs. Like, would this be something that one of my friends would like, or all of my friends would like, that I could put on a mixtape? Sort of like going through and kind of choosing singles. And what is the most commercially or most the word I like to use is the most immediate song, the one that hits you on that first listen. You don't want to put out a single that's going to take 7 listens for you to catch on, because if if the DJ starts playing it after 3 listens, you're not going to hear it enough to sort of immerse yourself in that song. So yeah, I do listen to songs. Now I don't like them. I don't judge them. Oh, is this, this song's better because it sounds more commercial. No, but whenever I listen, I've been in the business long enough to be able to like hear a song like, Haircut 100. The minute I heard Love Plus One, I knew that was going to be a hit. Now I don't pick hits. I'm not whatever, but I knew stuff like that would be a hit. And there are songs that, Old Siam Sir would not have been something that I would have immediately chose as a single.
Gotcha.
In fact, Back to the Egg to me works better as an album than a collection of singles.
Singles,
sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
But you can't
I see where you're coming from. Yeah.
You can't sell AM radio on an album. They should have gone FM on this, which I think that was kind of a problem. I think that they were aiming it for AM radio because that's people who were buying Paul McCartney. That's people who bought Silly Love Songs. That's people who bought With a Little Luck. They should have actually taken this to album radio and pushed it to them because it was it's just an incredibly powerful record. Not necessarily top 40, not necessarily My Love and Listen to What the Man Said.
Right. Gotcha. So then from that, then we go through what's the song which I think is probably the most commercial on the album. Maybe would have been a better opening single than Getting Closer, and that's Arrow Through Me. Let's hear your thoughts on that, Schnee.
I think it's an incredibly amazing track. Again, I don't think it should have been a single. But then what am I? Yeah, like I said, this album works as a whole, and Getting Closer was an amazing single. But at the same time, though, it was just because Arrow Through Me was so different than the rest of the songs. So when you present Arrow Through Me, people are going to go, "Oh my God, he's recorded London Town 2. I can't wait to hear the album." And I think that's because it doesn't represent the album. It represents Paul as an amazing singer-songwriter and Wings as a great band.
Right. But it also had kind of to continue the success with a little luck. It still has that kind of feel that With a Little Luck had. So,
absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you don't want to put out 2 singles that sound the same.
Very similar.
Very similar sounding. Right.
Heavy stuff.
Back to back, but it worked the first time. Obviously, it could have worked the second time too if that was the opening single.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. I mean, I get that, but like I said, it didn't represent the album, and I think that the first single always needs to represent the album.
What the album is.
Gotcha.
Good point.
Kind of what I think a lot of us call the gateway track. A lot of people will say, hey, what's the best song on the album? No, I mean, the thing is, the song that you want to focus on is the gateway track. If you like that track 9 times out of 10, that's kind of the track that best represents the album. Arrow Through Me was not that, even though it's an amazing song. Yesterday is not a gateway track for the Help album.
No.
But it's an amazing song. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Andy, your thoughts on Arrow Through Me?
From the minute I heard the song, it was my favorite on the album. Hands down, start to finish. A little bit of a Steely Dan-esque feel on this track, too, a little bit, which I've just loved. I loved his vocal on it. I like that it was included on the Pure McCartney compilation a couple of years ago because somebody obviously thought it was worthy of a reassessment. Very slick song. To Schnee's point, not in style with the rest of the album at all, but it works. And then I know what it was, a top 40 single.
It was 29.
29. Yeah, so but I don't think I agree. It should not have been a single because it wouldn't have worked. It works better as an album piece. And I agree with Steve.
Okay. An interesting thing is you're saying it fell in the top 40, right? Name one casual McCartney fan that knows that song.
Yeah, no,
which is kind of weird.
Right.
Yeah, and that shocks me that it fell within the top 40 because if I mention that song to anybody apart from kind of like the people who are a little deeper into McCartney, if I mention that song, they're going to go, "Oh, no, I have no idea what you're talking about."
Right.
But then they might say that about Getting Closer too. So.
Right, and that begs the question to ask then, okay, so were the casual McCartney fans falling off because maybe they didn't really care for London Town and they didn't give Back to the Egg a try? Were the hardcore fans starting to fall off again, again too? I mean, were they, going in past of different musicians as well? I mean, it's just kind of interesting to, why didn't this album, resonate with the casual and the hardcore fans,
I think it was because of the time. Because like I said at the beginning, look at 1979. Such an exciting time for music. Like the old guard was kind of falling into the background. So even Steely Dan or Doobie Brothers or all these people were being cast aside because the young guard was climbing at the charts. Disco was already on the way out, and I think that it was just bad timing. I think that people were overlooking the album because they were looking for the next best thing, and they didn't realize that the next best thing was actually Back to the Egg.
Right. Moving on, probably one of my least favorites on.
Tom doesn't like this one.
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of Rockestra Theme. I find the riff boring. I find that you got all these great musicians on the planet, the best on the planet, and then this is what they do. But it was a single in France, I think it was the Grammy winner in 1980 for best rock instrumental performance. So you got to give you credit for that. I also performed the concert for the people of Kampuchea. But Steve, you like this one, right?
I love it. I think it's just a great hook. Again, going back to energy, you can feel that everybody's digging it. Now, do I think it's overdone? Do I think there's too many musicians on it? I would love to hear a Wings version of it without all the extra things going on.
Well,
I'm not saying it would be as good or as powerful.
Right. They kind of did do something like that, but just overlapping, the guitar parts on top of the guitar parts and stuff like that. So they did have kind of a feeling of what they were going into, But
I love it.
But go ahead.
I love it.
Yeah. Andy?
I love it.
Absolutely. Again, cornerstone track of the album, Rockestra Theme. The hook, everything about it, big bombastic piece. I think it's great. The lyrics, I don't care about the lyrics. Having any dinner, I don't care. I think it's great. I mean, what a way to kick off side 2, right? You flip the album over, boom, right out of the gate. Awesome.
Yeah, good point. I mean, it is a really good way to grab your attention again once you flip the album, and
I think so.
Brings you in. Yeah,
especially because Arrow Through Me kind of just guided you down to this whole feeling of like, wow, that was a great side 1. Then you turn it over and it kickstarts it.
Right.
Yeah.
All over again.
Right. And then to continue with that, with that energy, then you get another pretty good, rocker To You, which for me I find underrated. You don't really hear a lot of people talking about this one when they talk about Back to the Egg, but again, you get that raspy vocal from Paul that I just really, really appreciate on this one. Andy.
For To You, yeah.
Yeah. For you.
Now you like this one. I'm not as keen. I'm not as keen on this as To You. This is one that I probably wouldn't have played as much. It's never done that much for me. I appreciate where it goes and it keeps the consistency of the record together with a spin it on type feel. But I've never enjoyed this one quite as much as some of the heavier ones like Old Siam Sir or Spin It On.
Gotcha. Steve?
I think that To You is a great track. I think that it's probably pretty close to what the demo would have sounded like, if not just the demo with stuff added to it, because it has that rawness, but it also has a freshness to it. Sure, he's sort of aping 50s, 60s rock or whatever, but he's having fun with it. And that really comes through. The overall theme of this record is these guys, whether it's Paul, whether it's Chris Thomas, whether it's the band, they're having fun making this record.
Right.
That's what it sounds like.
Right, and then you really get the good Denny and Linda backing vocals with when Paul's singing to you, and they're adding their backing vocals to It Could Happen to You. I really dig that aspect of the song as well. But then the next two songs, 10 and 11, tracks 10 and 11, you really just it's changes kind of the whole
a little bit of a left turn.
Left turn right there. And then and it's great when he does these he puts these songs together, but you don't really think that he would do it twice in a row.
Yeah.
But it works.
But it works.
It does.
Yeah, and I really dig it. The first one up is After the Ball, A Million Miles. Medley. Paul didn't think these songs were strong enough on their own, so obviously he puts them together. Steve, what are your thoughts?
They're absolutely incredible. I think what Paul's trying to do is saying, "Hey, is this going to be my Abbey Road side too?" And then he puts these two songs together, and everyone's getting all excited, like, "Oh my god, oh my god, oh my god!" But then he changes it again. I think these songs are great. I'm glad he didn't throw them away.
Yes.
You think of a song like Water Spout. Why did he throw that away?
Oh, exactly.
Daytime, Nighttime Suffering. Why did he throw that as a B-side? But he did not throw these away. And they're emotional. Because of the raspiness in his voice and the production and the melodies and the arrangements, they're actually just within these two songs, 4 great, beautiful songs. And
exactly.
Incredible.
I'm kind of surprised he just didn't put all 4 of them together for
was one big long thing
for one big medley. Yeah, and I think I think they could have easily found a way to do that. But do you do that for 4 kind of more ballady type songs? You know what I mean?
Interesting, Tom, to see how he would have sequenced those 4.
Right.
Would he have changed the order of them all as one piece? Like a Red Rose Speed medley for the winner.
Yeah.
I love when this happens. Because like I said, we're getting songs that he may have just thrown away.
Right.
And are these songs going to change the world? Probably not, but they changed mine. They added to mine.
I mean, Million Miles might be the lesser of the two, but After the Ball, I mean, my God, the vocals on After the Ball is ridiculous.
Yeah.
Right. I agree. Yeah. So then track 11, the second medley, in a row here, which is one of my favorite songs on the album. I really love Winter Rose and Love Awake, especially going into Love Awake. It's just so beautiful. I think the way the way they transfer into Love Awake is excellent. And then you just hear the raspiness in Winter Rose, and then you hear the smoothness of his voice in Love Awake. It's
Love Awake. Oh.
Yeah, and it's perfect in my opinion. Obviously, the video was filmed for the TV show. But Steve, what are your thoughts on this one?
It's beautiful. Like I said, these. I love the fact that they are close together. I mean, it might have made more sense to put one on side 1 and one on side 2, but to have the songs together, it's a quartet of these great, beautiful songs that I mean, the harmonies on Love Awake but there's such. Again, even though the songs sound sad or mid-tempo, whatever you want to call it, mournful, they're still that you can still feel that joy in creating this music. That's what I really love about this record is you can feel this record. More so, he's put out great records, but this one is just so much something.
It changes. You've listened to 7 or 8, 9, 10 tracks. And most of the tracks are full of energy, and right out of the gate, you hear all this crazy rockin' music. And now you hear 4 ballads, really, in 2 songs. And you're like, okay, this is the total left turn here, but it's good. It's a good turn.
And then another complete turn with track 12, The Broadcast.
Yeah.
Okay, now maybe I was wrong when I said that Spin It On was my least favorite track of the album.
But the broadcast is completely, I mean, just out of left field. I mean, it's kind of.
Well, here's where
I dig it. But go ahead.
I dig it, Tom. I dig it too, and here's why it works. Okay, because you hear those strings that you hear at the beginning of the reception. So that's coming back to that whole. It's lending itself to the concept album, okay?
Right.
Because you're listening to the beginning of reception, you're hearing the dials change, and you hear those strings coming in, and you're like, now you hear it again. Now it's now it's connected. Now it's connected, and you're okay. Okay, I know where they're going with this now. I get it, and that's what this is, and it's. I think it's beautiful. I do.
And I like the fact that it's actually the owner of the castle that's reading passages from a couple books. I think that's just really cool. You know, the Sport of Kings and the Little Man that he's reading from. I just think it's just so unique in a way that, you know, you don't expect something like this to work. Maybe it shouldn't work. But
you don't know what the hell it means. You know, we've got a chance. We're going to take it. We may win, win, or lose. Or what the hell are they talking about? I don't know, but it sounds good.
I think, in my personal opinion, this is really McCartney showing his experimental side. And then when you look back on what has come before, what has come since reception to the broadcast, it kind of it does sort of draw that sort of experimental thing. Those other songs in between those are not experimental. But what he's done with the album is very experimental, because he's gone from rock to soft. He's put the ballads in there. I mean, this could feasibly be, you know, a collection of hits, and maybe these are a collection of a particular journey in McCartney's life, or a journey he wants the listener to take from that reception, and then all of a sudden it starts making sense by the broadcast. Still very experimental. Maybe it doesn't work. For some, maybe people look too deep into it, but like me, maybe, but maybe there's something in there, you know.
I think there is. I think there absolutely is. And you're just thinking about it, just going through all these tracks in my head now. When this comes out again in the box set, and people that don't know this stuff and it gets reevaluated, their minds are going to get blown when this comes out again.
Right.
It really is.
I think so. Yeah, I do think over the last 10 years, 11, 12 years or whatever it's been since I've been on Facebook, and then, you know, being part of McCartney chat, you know, with pages, you see people slowly starting to, their thoughts on Back to the Egg are starting to become more favorable over the last 10, 15 years than maybe it was, you know, and the first maybe 20 years of its existence.
Yeah, I've been. This is the one that I've been got a piggy bank and keep putting quarters in and just waiting for this thing to come out as a box set. This is something that I find that there are many people out there who love this album, but I think that when the naysayers or the people that are not in love with this record, when they hear it again, when they have a chance to reevaluate it, it's really going to blow people's mind. I mean, I'm hoping when they watch this that they go out and they pull the album off the shelves, LP, CD, you know, however you want to listen to it, and give the album a listen. You know, give it a fresh listen. Wipe all your preconceptions away.
Clean, absolutely. Then we get back into another big rock after, you know, the two previous tracks. I mean, obviously this is the continuation of the Rockestra group, you know, people. But then it goes again. You have a nice little coda to where it goes back to revisiting, you know, We're Open Tonight, which again, you know, kind of, you know, brings us back to the theme of you know, of the album. But again, I mean, it's just, I think I find this one a lot more interesting than the Rockestra theme. I kind of like this one more. I like Paul's vocals on this one. I like the, you know, the back. It's got some good backing vocals as well. But I really dig that We're Open Tonight kind of at the end. Kind of like, you know, with the, you know, like he's done in the past with like 1985, and he, you know, brings back the Band in the Run, you know, track. You know what I mean? So he's done that before.
I love that.
And you know, you know.
And he's done it. He's very good at that. That's going back to Abbey Road. That's going back to Pepper. That's going back to all those things that he thematically tie these albums up in some kind of a concept way. And he does it with the last two. He does it with the broadcast, and he does it here with the "We're Open Tonight" coda, and I think it's a great. I almost would have liked it if it was actually the last track on the album.
Yes, exactly.
Exactly.
That would have been a great closer.
Yeah,
but
I think so too.
I think the great thing about this, and I mentioned it earlier, that "We're Open Tonight" reprise. What it does is, even if it's your first time listening, you're remembering. Okay, even though it's chunkier, and excuse me, even though it's chunkier, doesn't it have almost that reggae type part to it? Yeah. And it's got this chunkier, bigger sound. It makes you go, I got to go back and hear this again, because with the broadcast and this, it's all coming together, and it plays out, and "Baby's Request" is almost the ending credits.
The ending credits.
Right.
Yeah. Good point there, Schnee. like he does with Broad Street with "Goodnight Princess." Has that same kind of vibe to it.
Right.
The movie's over, lights are on. Okay, gotta go. See you later.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's the exit music, if you will.
It is. It really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And what and here we go. He brings back the so-called granny song, if you will. I don't know how you feel about the granny songs in
I love
McCartney's
it.
channel.
Give us more granny. Go.
Yeah. I love that stuff.
Thank you, Schnee.
I love Juber's guitar playing on this. It's great. Vocally, I think it's a great vocal performance from Paul as well. I just think the band is really kicking it on this album. On this track, I think it's great.
And I think that probably the rest of the Back to the Egg is where Paul McCartney is now, and "Baby's Request," like I said, it's the end credits, and that's where he came from. Musically, that jazzy feel, it's where he came from. That's kind of like, it takes you all the way back to the beginning again, Back to the Egg.
Yeah.
I just think I discovered the theme of this album after 40 years.
Yeah. There's a lot of talk, Juber, for one. We had Juber on the show last year, and we talked about this, the inclusion of would this album not necessarily be better, but would it have sold better with the inclusion of "Goodnight Tonight," on the album? He believes it would have done 10 times better because of the success. I think it was a top 5 hit. I think "Goodnight Tonight" was number 5 or 4 or 5 when that came out. What do you think about that? So not really considering it. Would it make it a better album, but would it have sold better?
I don't think it would have sold better, because for the same reason Arrow threw me, because "Goodnight Tonight" does not represent the album. "Goodnight Tonight" is its own beast. And now I think that if you're talking in terms of, we need this record to sell, throw it at the end of side 1 or throw it at the end of side 2, whatever. But they're going to be breaking up Paul's initial idea for the album.
Right.
The album has a certain feel to it that would totally come in and take away from. And I love that song. And I even think that "Daytime, Nighttime Suffering" may not fit on this album. If they put it on, if they, it's just like everyone complaining about, them putting "Penny Lane" and "Strawberry Fields" onto Sgt. Pepper.
Right.
Would it make it a better album? Oh, heck yeah. It would just make it the greatest album in freaking history. But it's also the greatest album in freaking history without him.
Gotcha. Where do you guys put this in the canon? Steve, where do you popularity or favorability for you? Where do you throw this in the canon for McCartney?
McCartney, it's my favorite McCartney album, period, bar none.
Wow.
Yeah.
High praise.
Now, think about, I'm not this and McCartney 2 were the last times, I believe, that McCartney made an album that sounded completely different than what came before. I think beginning in '82, he was making albums that all had a similar feel, which I'm not saying negatively. But the experimentation on McCartney 2 was completely different than what was way out there. But there's so much experimentation on this album, but there's so many great songs. Now, look, I'm not saying Getting Closer is better than Jet. I'm saying it's my favorite album. Do I think it's his best album? Yeah. No, but no. I've listened to Band on the Run more than this. I've listened to Red Rose Speedway more. I've listened to McCartney more. But this, I think, is my favorite and deserves people to go and reevaluate it. Right. And to give it a listen, give it a fresh listen, because it is a fresh sounding album. This is an album that does not sound dated. You can listen to London Town and go, oh, that sounds very 1977, 78. Back to the Egg, because of the songs, because of Chris Thomas's production. Very similar thing with my favorite album of all time, which is Badfinger, Wish You Were Here. That album was recorded and released in 1974. You play that for somebody today, they're not going to know when that album was recorded because it's so timeless. Back to the Egg may be influenced by the punk and new wave, but it doesn't sound like they catered to the audience. And that's what always dates an album. Oh, hey, let's add these keyboards or this kind of piccolo sound that's really big or these horns that are really big. And then 3 years later, you're going, oh, that's so 1983. This album doesn't suffer from that. It's just fresh from beginning to end.
All right. Yeah, cool. Andy?
I would rank it. It's definitely in the top 10. Probably the bottom. Probably somewhere between 7 or 8 or 9. But definitely top 10. Definitely top 10.
Don't say McCartney 3 is better.
It's not. It's not. It's not even no. No, it's not better.
I'm kidding.
Listen, after playing the hell out of this record, all weekend, I mean, I can definitely say that it has definitely climbed the ladder, if you will, in the McCartney canon. Mm-hmm. I'm not really sure where I put this. I know it's a favorite of mine, so I mean, I know I can definitely will play it often, and I play the whole thing. It's not one of those albums where I love half of them, the other half of them I'm going to skip. This is definitely a complete album for me, where all the tracks have something to offer for you, even if you don't like Rockestra. Even if I don't like Rockestra Stream, there's something there about it that still makes it interesting, that I want to listen to it each time I play it. So
yeah, and like I said, it works as an album, as a whole, right. From beginning to end. It works together. Everything is there for a reason.
Let's say, and to your point, Schnee, but here's the question. Forget about Goodnight Tonight and Daytime, Nighttime Suffering if they were on the album. What if Wonderful Christmas Time was on the album? What does that do to the – how does that change
okay. I mean, it wasn't recorded yet.
It was recorded. It just wasn't released yet. It was already done.
Okay. I'm going to step out on a limb here. I'm a huge Christmas music fan, a huge Christmas fan. I love that song. I do not understand the hate. I would listen to that song 10 times more than I'd listen to Ding Dong Ding Dong by George Harrison but Christmas songs don't work on non-Christmas albums.
Right.
They just don't.
They just don't. But Crazy period for sure.
It was.
Yeah, I mean, I know that ABBA is going to have a Christmas song on their new album. They stated that. But when you're getting the first album 40 years from ABBA, you can kind of I'll put up with the Christmas. But see, to me, I listen to Christmas music now, and it's September.
It's timeless.
So I still love the song, even though it receives so much hatred, and I'll take a public flogging for that. I love that song. It is so original, so unique.
Absolutely, and it's an album. It's in a CD. Now, the CD version, the original one that was on EMI pressing, I associate this one.
Yeah,
there's the 93.
Yes,
here's the 93, and here's the 89. Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I associate this, to me. It's like a Christmas record because I got it for Christmas, and when I play it, it's like the whole thing feels very Christmassy to me because it's one of the bonus tracks. It's one of the bonus tracks, so it lends itself to that feel. I mean,
so it was even a bonus track for the '89 release.
It was,
right?
Yes, it was.
Okay, cool, excellent.
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
Go ahead, Steve.
Can I ask a favor though?
Sure.
Can we not talk about Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reggae?
No, we will.
Done. We're done. Yeah.
Anyway,
this one's hard to find. These are hard to find now. You don't see these two.
Yes.
No,
exactly.
No, you don't. No, I see the '93s around a lot more than the '89 stuff. But but excellent. I love this discussion. What any last thoughts on the record, Steve?
I think it's an amazing record. Like I said earlier, it is really the true spiritual follow-up to Band on the Run. I mean, they start with the same first two letters.
Yep.
You know?
Yep.
And it's also Band on the Run, back to the egg.
Right.
You know,
Works.
hello. No, I think it's an incredibly overlooked, or it's an incredible overlooked album that really needs the super deluxe edition or whatever they call
agreed.
those.
Agreed 100%.
And I think the only thing probably holding those back is you've got all those contracts of the 50 people that played on Rockestra stuff. And he's probably trying to get clearance for that. That's the only reason I can imagine that has not come out.
That's the word. I mean, I think it was for the concert for the people at Campuchia, which I think is holding, it was just holding it up. Yeah. So I mean, he can release the album anytime he wants. I think he just wants the Campuchia for a special feature. To be included, which would be a great addition.
And of course, that Glasgow show, which was professionally recorded, put that in there as well too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think the album, of all the Wings albums, right? I think it's the one that actually does need to be reevaluated the most because it was the last one and it's kind of forgotten. You know, even Wildlife has grown in stature now. Why? Because it's the first Wings album. Okay, so there's a little more history associated with it, and so. Even though it was the worst selling Wings album, it's kind of grown in stature. This one here really needs to be really reappraised and reevaluated because it was the final album and really overlooked by them. It didn't get that same drawing power that Speed of Sound or Venus of Mars or Wings Over America did. And that audience needs to see this now and hear it because the music on this record from start to finish, thematically, it's all here. It's all here on it, and it's going to be an incredible package when it comes out.
I agree.
I think that people put Paul McCartney in a box, and I think that's why Wildlife failed because of the fact that he was not being a Beatle. And Paul McCartney has not been, people have to remember the guy who wrote Yesterday. Yeah, it's the same guy that wrote My Love. Yeah, it's the same guy that wrote Getting Closer. But he's not going to keep doing the Beatles over and over again. None of the Beatles kept doing the Beatles over and over again, unless you count Ringo constantly putting Beatles song titles into his songs. But the thing is people put McCartney in a box. So once they got past the whole Beatle thing, then they started saying, well, this doesn't sound like Band on the Run, or this doesn't sound like Speed of Sound. This doesn't sound like, but that's the great thing about it is McCartney made a different album every time. Yep. And that's what was exciting.
Yeah, no, I agree with both of what you guys said. I mean, good points by both of you. And it'll absolutely, when we do finally get this box set, I think it's a lot of people are going to change their tune, about their feelings of this album. And it's deservedly so.
I think this episode of Two Legs needs to be a bonus on the DVD that comes with the box.
Good point. Thank you, Steve. What I also hope we get with this package is Paul today reevaluating this period and giving us his take on what did he think about it. Give us some feedback on the songs. Look at 80-year-old Paul and let's talk about that period 42 years ago. Now and tell us now what you think about it.
Yeah.
Don't just half-ass it. Tell us what you really thought about it,
Right.
We'll have Paul call me, and I'll do a Zoom interview with him. Oh, that's right. You guys going to fight for me for that?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We'll somehow hack your computer, make sure it doesn't work that day.
No. You guys will get it before I do. So.
Well, I doubt it. Anyways. But Steve, thank you for being here and talking about Back to the Egg, and let's get back to talking, about you, telling people where they can find you, in shows and what it is that you do.
Well, you could find me on YouTube just under the name Stephen Schnee, Stephen, and then the last name Schnee. That's where I put all my videos and interviews, and I talk about artists and stuff. Then I also have a few radio shows on Mixcloud. So if you go to Mixcloud and just search my name, or just type in Mixcloud Stephen Schnee, it'll take you to that. You can subscribe there. You can show up on Tuesday nights when I play. This is Ski Lodge Live, and interact with the people, and it's wonderful to create this, just like what you guys do. It's wonderful to create something to entertain people and to hopefully give them some kind of joy or something like that, and then to be able to get that back. When feel that joy when you see people digging the music in the live streams. And they're not saved, so you can't go and see any episode because the whole copyright thing. You guys know,
right?
That.
Yeah, of course, of course.
So yeah.
Can you take us in real quick? I wanted to ask this earlier, but I forgot. But can you take us kind of into the world of doing liner notes for CDs and stuff? I mean, how do you approach that? What has to be in it for you in order to you wanting to do a project like that?
Well, here's an interesting thing. Very few of the projects I've done have been things that I went after. They're usually a label coming to me saying, hey, can you do liner notes? This is serious. Can you do liner notes for an album by Charo and Sal Soul Orchestra? Now, I know that album by the cover because, it's Charo, and she was looking hot in 1977 or 1978, especially wet T-shirt and everything. So I knew it that way, but I never listened to it. So basically, a label like that would come to me, and they would say, "Hey, we need somebody to do this." More than likely, it was and of course, I don't do anything for free. I mean, as an as a creative person, you stop doing that. 30 years into your career, when you realize it's not getting you anywhere, it's just get money. So they come to me and they say, "Let's do this," and I'll accept it because I love that challenge. I've never listened to that Charo and Sal Soul Orchestra album before, but I go in and I do as much research on it as possible. I have to come up with, and sometimes you try to get a hold of an artist. Of course, I couldn't get a hold of Charo. She wouldn't talk about it. And I think it's just because, Charo's a star. She's not going to talk to, a schmuck like me. But then there are things, and there was I've done probably 20 or 30 different R&B, soul, disco. I did Silver Convention liner notes and BT Express and all these GQ, all these great, soul. But this isn't stuff that I grew up listening to. This is stuff that I enjoy. But I was buying, Beatles, Badfinger, Osmonds, and Glenn Campbell and Neil Diamond, and then Queen, and then went right into the whole new wave thing. So I was experiencing this for the first time a lot of the times, writing about it and researching it. But there were things like Shoes and 2020, things like that I went for, suggested with the label, and I was able to get those. And I had relationships with these people in the band. They knew who I was, and so those were easy to get information for. But it is a process. It's a lot of writing, and I never read the liner notes when I'm after I've proofed them, after they're proofread, they're laid out. I never open that booklet and read my liner notes because I'm going to go, crap, I forgot to mention that.
Say this.
Oh my God, I put 1873 instead of 1973. So I never go back and read them, but I'm very proud of them, and I'm glad that they're out there. But I did a lot more writing before the pandemic. Since the pandemic, I've sort of switched to the whole video and radio show because it's more instant gratification. It's more like I'm done, put it out. Whereas liner note or writing, sometimes you put it out, it takes a week for it to get posted and stuff. So I want just to fill the airways with as much positive energy as possible.
Cool, excellent. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Andy, anything you want to add before we sign off?
Thanks. This was great, Steve. Thank you very much. I had a pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, it was a complete honor to me, and I was excited when Tom approached me about it and asked me to give $100. That's the only way that you would do it. So hopefully he gave you the full 100.
You got to pay us to get on the show. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I know it took us a while to coordinate a date to do it, but I'm glad we were able to get a date finally to get her.
I'm so glad, and I had an absolutely 100% great time, and I was able to share my excitement about this record.
Awesome.
Thank you for that. Yeah. So by the time this is up and posted, you'll have would have done our show series on our favorite non-Beatles related albums, and if you haven't seen that, guys, go ahead to our YouTube channel at Two Legs, a Paul McCartney podcast, and you can check that out. That's going to be a YouTube exclusive. That's the only place where you're going to hear it, because we probably won't put that on the over here on the audio. So please go to our YouTube channel, check that out. Please subscribe, as well as going out and checking out Stephen Schnee's channel, and please subscribe to that as well, because you're getting pretty close to 1,000 subs.
Yeah, I'm about 135 away or something like that.
Excellent.
So
it's cool.
Getting pretty exciting.
Yeah, he's getting closer. So let's get him there.
Yes, like and subscribe.
Yes. So everybody out there, go ahead, Steve. Go ahead.
I was going to say thank you, gentlemen, for this opportunity. It was an absolute honor and a pleasure.
Oh, I'm glad we were finally able to get you on the show. Yeah. Really looking forward to this. So you can reach us. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at Two Legs Podcast. You can email us at twolegspodcast@gmail.com. We got the website, twolegspodcast.com, where you can find all the Twitter feeds and the shows. The link to the shows there, and I think that covered it. Thank you, everybody, for watching.
You guys have a podcast? Thank you, guys.
This isn't going out. Yeah, this is what this
I know.
Chat we're recording. Anyways, thank you, everybody out there in the world of podcasting. We really appreciate you guys being here. And as always, have a great day and a beautiful night, everyone. Take care. We'll see you soon.